Good morning, everyone. Bonjour une fois de plus. Rarely do you have a conversation around climate finance in this region without someone mentioning it. And I think yesterday I lost count of the number of times it got mentioned as sort of a solution to the financing gap we're facing in the region. You guessed it. I'm talking about carbon markets. Carbon markets in our regions are sort of at a crossroad. We know the offerings are increasing, but the regulatory environment as well as the significant implementation gaps that exist are hindering the development of progress of the implementation of carbon markets in our region. Now, how do we accelerate the implementation of mechanisms that will advance the adoption of carbon markets in our region? What is the existing landscape? What are the opportunities that are at hand and can be leveraged by all of us? And also, what sort of collaborative mechanisms do we have that we can copy or we can sort of adapt or customize to our context, which are those we have out there? To respond to these questions, we have a rich and varied panel, and I'll give a disclaimer after this. The first person on the panel is Mr. Felhi. Felhi is the General Manager for North Africa for the KliK Foundation. Has experience providing technical and advocacy services to African governments and international organizations like the World Bank, the Global Environment Fund, UNEP, on the policy and sustainable development. In 2001, Anas notably served as the Partnerships and South-South Cooperation Head for the Climate Change Competency Center, an initiative set up by King Mohammed at COP22. Obviously, Anas has a long CV achievement. You can read more about him on our website on the page that is dedicated to our speakers. The second speaker on this panel is Mr. Eslam Mahdy. Eslam is the Associate Director of Sustainability at Guidehouse office in Germany. Eslam leads PCAF's work activities in Africa and Middle East region with over 15 years of experience. We specialize in sustainable energy and energy belt environment. So, like I said, similar to Anas, we can read more about Eslam and his work on the page we dedicated to our speakers on the UNEP website. Our third participant is someone who comes from sort of the institutional side, Mr. Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed Rachid is the Director of Institutional Affairs at the Casablanca Financing Authority, the CFCA, who are also supporting us as part of this event. Mr. Mohammed Rachid has played a decisive role in implementing numerous reforms in the financial sector, taxation, exchange and control, and many laws, as well as rules and regulations to build a stronger value proposition to improve the attractiveness and competitiveness of Casablanca Financial Center. Prior to joining the CFC, Mr. Rachid served as Head of Services of the Relations with the European Union and Head of Services of Relations with International Financial Organizations at the Morocco Department of Treasury and the Ministry of Economy and Finance. Mr. Mohammed Rachid has a long list of achievements, impactful ones, which I invite you to read on our website on the page dedicated to our speakers. I invite my panelists to come on stage and please clap for them as they come. Good morning, everyone, again. As I was mentioning, this is a rich and diverse panel, but you realize that there's no gender diversity. So to sort of create a balance, we'll be taking more patients from the females than the male. And this is also sort of like an invitation for more people to get interested in questions of related to carbon markets. Good morning, everyone. So, you are a practitioner at the KliK Foundation does procurement, carbon procurement. You have a lot of experience working in the region. So, where are we at? What are the lessons that we can learn from like the global carbon trade trends? And what are the procurement and finance gaps that you've noticed?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Gaston, for having me here today. And thank you again to UNEP for the invitation. Maybe just before I kick off the answer on your question, maybe just a general introduction on what is the KliK Foundation. So we were actually created by the Swiss Association of Petroleum Distributors in order to compensate emissions from the transport sector in Switzerland. So we've been doing that since the early 2000s. And since 2022, and the finalization of the Glasgow rulebook, which is actually the rulebook that gives the rules and procedures in order for countries to trade on these Paris Agreement carbon markets. We've developed these activities in about 15 different countries, and actually just yesterday, Kenya has actually signed a bilateral agreement with Switzerland in order to enable these trades. To go back to your question, Gaston, I think this is one of many instances where Africa is actually the one giving lessons. Africa is today the continent with the most bilateral agreements on Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, and Ghana specifically is the most advanced country in the world on carbon markets. Ghana actually has 3 authorizations for these, what we call in our jargon, cooperative market approaches, on different sectors. I think cook stoves is the realm where a lot of activities flourish on international carbon markets. Maybe to walk you through the portfolio that we manage here at the KliK Foundation in North Africa. We focus on energy, waste, and also HFC destruction. Just to give you maybe an example of how we deploy these activities in Morocco specifically. We've developed a 500 megawatt program for the installation of solar panels for the C&I sectors in Morocco. We're seeking authorization for this program, and it should be coming in the coming weeks. We've had the joy of having the Naviva Group and also Itashizo Zeninova and Itoshu as partners on the Casablanca waste plants. And I believe there are some sectors where we don't actually see the benefits of carbon markets, and I believe these sectors are the ones we should be focusing on.
Thank you very much for having provided our context as well and raised the gaps that you see. One of the things that you mentioned, for example, is standardization and transparency, given how much bilateral agreements we have, but there seems to be some differences in how these are addressed and how these are perceived. Now, you work with PCAF, and PCAF is about carbon accounting finance. So how can standardized carbon accounting frameworks enhance transparency and trust in the carbon markets?
Yeah, thank you very much, Gaston. Thank you, UNEP team, for the great organization. Just a quick, even more stressful. Just kidding. No, I mean, for the gender equity, just a quick note that I have 4 sisters, so I really love to be with you, Mr. Rachid, Mr. Anas, but I also will always feel more comfortable when there are ladies and female around because I grew up with 4 sisters, so we may consider that in the next one. But anyway, yeah, sufficient competent ladies in the room, those sisters, of course. So I just go to build on what discussion in the first session about the regulatory frameworks, about the adaptation of Article 6, and then we can see the recent developments of the many countries in the region, Morocco, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and many other developing either voluntary or compliance market, carbon market credits. And one can see very soon, very quick, the impact of those changes on in the field of sustainability and energy efficiency and so on. Most of the project developers I meet in Egypt or Morocco or the Middle Egypt, they are trying to develop some sort of sustainable project or energy efficient project. They started also to think of how to monetize, the carbon removal or the carbon reduction that may come out of this project in a form of carbon credits. So this change in the regulatory framework has an impact on the mentality of work and also on the financial institutions themselves. Like each financial institution now started to think of where its money goes that would then make emissions in the real economy, and could also have potential to removal of carbon emissions, which also could be translated in monetized in carbon credits. But then all financial institutions at the end would need some sort of, as you have mentioned, standard or a way to calculate the emissions they finance, which we call it in PCAF language, the financed emissions. Professional in sustainability field, I felt that practice to memorize an acronym per day. So if I think I see many familiar faces with the PCAF acronym, but if you are not familiar with it, PCAF stands for Partnership for Carbon Accounting Financials. We speak interchangeably about two things: the initiative, which has 600 signatories worldwide, and the standards. The standard itself provides a methodology and approach to calculate the finance emissions. It's a globally harmonized standard, somehow well established. One may call it or claim it the best in class when it comes to calculating the finance emissions. It's still young in terms of the lifetime of standards, 7, 8 years, so a lot to do, a lot to improve. But it's what we have now as I said, one may claim the best in class standard to calculate the finance emissions. By doing so, banks would be able to identify the carbon hotspot across its portfolio of investments. These carbon hotspots can easily be qualified to either opportunities for carbon credit to be created. So I wouldn't claim that PCAF may have a direct impact on or can be translated directly to carbon credit because it's not a functional standard, but it would give the financial institutions a clear picture and estimates about the finance emissions, the carbon emissions that they produce in the real economy, and hence can be translated to carbon credit. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the instruments the tools that have been put in place or that could be used as part of the council will help investors have a better understanding, and also all the stakeholders that are intervening in the carbon markets value chain. And this brings us naturally to what the CFC does. I think the CFC describes itself as a natural magnet for investment. Mr. Rachid, Mohammed Rachid, you are the Institutional Affairs Director at the CFC. What policy and infrastructure reforms do you think are needed to attract more carbon market players to regional hubs like the CFC?
Thank you very much, Gaston. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to UNEP to organize this regional roundtable here in Marrakesh and inviting me Casablanca City to be part of it. Inviting me to have this dialogue about this important issue related to capital markets and investment in Africa and Middle East. First of all, I think that the starting point of everything is the will. I mean, you know that not all countries or policymakers or should have the same understanding, the same will, and the same set of challenges of climate change. So I think that first of all, you need to have the ambition, the mission, the purpose to tackle these issues, and it depends also on the financial apps or the digital apps. For example, with Casablanca City, as we are leading hub in Africa and continents, we have a better understanding of our continent, and we have the ambition to play a role in climate finance. We know about what should be done in terms of infrastructure, in terms of policy. Our continent, unfortunately, is in for sustainable development of the continent, but also to mitigate climate risk. And by listing these projects, we can make them viable and then help the transition to a low carbon economy and help the transformation of the continent towards sustainable development. So I think that it's very important to have this ambition. It's very important to be a believer in these things. And we are convinced, as we were convinced before, that this is the way to live up our continent. Now, the second part of the answer is what we are doing in terms of facility with it. What we are doing as a leader now, as you may know, Casablanca Finance City is number one according to the GCI, the Financial Central Index, number one in Africa, but also we are number one according to the GGFI, which is the green or global green finance index. And our CEO, Mahdy, is forward to introduce the last edition, launched a couple of weeks ago. We confirmed the decision, confirmed the commitment towards climate finance and playing a crucial role and central role toward this transition of the continent towards this sustainable development and green growth economy of the continent.
Thank you for those insights. It's clear that the will is really primordial in this, and institutions like the CFCE are playing a role in enabling the development of initiatives like carbon market and also supporting actors intervening in this carbon market value chain in a way to be able to collaborate together. And talking about collaboration, we would like to hear from each of you. How do you think the various actors can collaborate to support the alignment of the voluntary and the compliance markets in the region? So we've heard from Eslam, which is much more on the community side, the transparency and counter side. We've heard from CFCA on the business and institutional side, and supporting actors, and also who is an actor in the field through the procurement actions dealing with developers and others. What do you think? How collaboration can happen among yourselves? So maybe we start with that.
Sounds good. Yes, I think that it's really important to collaborate, to have the same mission, to have the same mission, because I think that as Africans we need to be optimistic, we need to be very ambitious, we need to think big if we want to tackle these big challenges. We can't do it alone. So that's why in the finance system, our position as a leading regional financial center, extra from local to the whole continent. So the mission of the finance system is to channel capital flows from the rest of the world to the continent to fuel, finance this economic transition of the continent. And we are collaborating with everyone, all stakeholders, all the market players are collaborating with the African Development Bank, collaborating with the African Common Market Initiative, PCAF, GIZ, World Bank, all stakeholders, nationally, regionally, and international level are with us in this ambition to develop regional common markets in the continent. Collaboration is also very important because we are a founding member of the CFS, which is the Financial Centers for Sustainability, and we are inventing and helping many other African financial centers to join this forum and to better do advocacy for the challenges and issues of our continents. It's also very important to learn from each other, to share experience, to share expertise. There's also something very important that I always to say that we are at the Finance City developing and launching in a couple of next two months the Africa Finance Institute, which is very important for training, education, and also best certification in climate finance for the whole continent. That's why it's not course, fertilizing to find the best solution adapted to our context. And also, I think that we need to get into, let's say, forget about the past, also ditch many years, many decades of copying and pasting solutions from outside to think about real solutions adapted to the real context of our customers. So that's what we need between us to collaborate and to learn from each other to find the right solution for the right problem. And if it's about creating and developing this common markets, I think that it needs to be common markets for Africans, by Africans, in Africa, and then supported by ours. The first. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that perspective, Mr. Eslam.
Thank you. I mean, one may see the carbon market now as that the ecosystem of it is a huge construction site, globally and regionally. I mean, like we are all building that ecosystem, like regulatory frameworks, project developers, standards, validators, verifiers, certification, and so on. So which is quite a challenge here, but as we all know that the other side of the coin challenge is the opportunity. So I think it has been repeated several times in yesterday's session and today also about regional cooperation, south-to-south cooperation. I think when it comes to markets could be translated to trade, and trade cannot be upscaled without being cross borders between countries. So I think it's the key, as Rachid said, it's a collaboration. I mean, the government believe that there is a regionally harmonized carbon market with trade register, with complete interoperability, when one can trade the carbon credit between the countries. That sounds a bit dreamy, but I think this is the path and this is the way. And that wouldn't happen without sufficient collaboration between all stakeholders involved in that ecosystem, which one can feel also as part of the discussion, particularly from the previous panel there. Thank you.
Thank you. We need collaboration within the ecosystem, and especially South-South cooperation as well, which brings us back to the point of regional integration and all the considerations. That's really what's your perspective on this?
Thank you, Gaston. I think there are three pillars in order to have these carbon market exchanges as sturdy as possible. I think there's transparency, which is not something that's very common in the voluntary carbon market. There is integrity, and there is a deep understanding and a deep partnership between countries that want to participate in these mechanisms. So I can talk maybe about my market, which is a compliance market, right? So we don't deal in the voluntary carbon market at all. It's not a political choice that was made by the KliK Foundation. It's more of as you said, a need for interoperability of carbon credits. So the Paris Agreement gives us the right paradigm to enable these trades. So I spoke about Article 6.2. There's also Article 6.4, which has the ambition of enabling these trades at a global level through a centralized market scheme. Procedures in these market trades are extremely complex and extremely long. I believe in Article 6.2, I believe we have the highest level of compliance that you can find in carbon markets because activities are evaluated by a third party, which is something that you also find in the voluntary carbon market. But further than that, and this is the importance of having bilateral agreements between partners. Both governments have a say on what the methodology used to determine the volume of carbon credits that will be generated. Both governments also have a say on if they will allow this activity to generate carbon credits. And I believe this is the main point that drives integrity in the carbon markets. And I think that a lot of you may have a negative view on carbon markets linked to various scandals that may have erupted in this market. However, I would ask you maybe to reconsider these scandals, as scandals are maybe a way of showing that things are working, that they are actually showing that they are an anomaly in the market system, rather than the common practice in it.
Thank you, Sanasili. We heard from a panelist. We now want to hear from you. But before we hear from you, we have a question for you, which we invite you to all answer. Please do scan the code on the screen to respond to the question we are asking you. What do you see as the most critical barrier to scaling carbon markets in Africa and the Middle East? You have options. Please do have your say. And we look forward to hearing from you. And I think that would be one of the takeaway actions from this panel, where we all think that engagement or commitment to working on reducing that barrier that we highlighted as the biggest. But we'll now hear from you. We're opening up the floor for questions. Maybe Mr. Nasiri did anticipate already some of the questions around the scandals and started responding to reassure you. But we want to hear from you. Are there any questions in the room? Yes, cheers up. You need the mic. Let me bring the mic to you. And while I'm here, if there are other questions, just raise your hand. We'll come to you, get all the questions, and respond to them.
Thank you very much. So, Chief Zahiri, I'm from Ubuntu based in Zimbabwe, and I think anyone in the carbon market knows that Zimbabwe is quite famous. And I think one question I have is, with the carbon markets, number one, Africa, I look at it that a lot of potential, but when you look at the size of the African continent, which was perhaps underestimated size of the map, it's only accounting for 16% of voluntary carbon pairs that are traded. Then when you look at the coverage of the carbon markets, I think there was a discussion yesterday talking about risk profiles. A lot of the stories that have been told about some of the scandals in quotation marks, I'm finding it absolutely, and I wish to hear your feedback on it, the level of lack of inclusion within the carbon markets, even though you've got IBCM and all of these new principles. Like I look at all the coverage on some of our biggest carbon markets, and communities, the beneficiaries are never actually interviewed. But we actually go and engage with them, they say, we were enjoying how things were structured. So what do you think needs to happen to change that so that we actually have more representation and inclusion?
Thank you for that question on representation and inclusion. Is there any other question in the room? Okay, we'll get this answer. We'll inspire another question from the audience. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for your question. Absolutely. There was absolutely quite an infamous case for the carbon markets in Zimbabwe. But in order to maybe give you another perspective on the work that we're doing, so we're not at all on the voluntary carbon markets, and that's because Swiss laws on the recognition of these attestations is a lot more strict than what pre-existed in the voluntary carbon market. This is why we say that we work on a compliance market on our side. Please allow me to maybe give you a bit more details on how this compliance works and how I can actually bring an answer to your question on local participation and maybe the share of proceeds to local communities through the carbon market. So first of all, we have quite a few safeguards through the Swiss CO2 law. The first one being that we cannot work on reforestation and afforestation projects because there is this ongoing lack of transparency in this specific market. We can't work on projects that are related to oil and gas extraction. We cannot work on projects that have a component of hydropower that is above 20 megawatts. And this goes directly to a concrete compliance threshold that we have to meet, which is additionality. Additionality is might seem as being quite a vague concept, but it's actually all written down in the methodologies and the way we prove that these carbon revenues were needed. So in order to show that that carbon finance is needed, we need to demonstrate additionality through 2 ways. It's either we cover at least 10% of the capex costs of the activity, or we raise the IRR by at least 2%. Right. So these are quite heavily regulated, and I can assure you that no project would have been authorized if these 2 criteria were not met. In order to go back to the part of your question on local participation, local engagement, and local consultation, Swiss CO2 law actually foresees the obligation for a yearly consultation with beneficiaries. And it also foresees there are guidelines on this, that at least 50% of the carbon revenues would need to be spent locally. I can assure you that at least in North Africa, I can quite confidently say that at least 100% of these carbon revenues are used in the country.
Thank you very much for that response. Yes, the situation at the back of the room. I'll bring you the mic quickly. We're almost out of time. Thank you. And please keep sharing your opinion on Mentimeter. If you haven't done so yet, please use the code to share your point of view on what the most critical barriers to scaling carbon finance in these regions.
Thank you, Gaston. It's both a question and a call for action. Since 2018, we partnered with a group of women scientists worldwide and created as a blockchain for good association in France. So we invite you to go and discover there is a lot of public reports. It's all in Creative Commons, and one of the big use cases that comes out is the use of public blockchain basically as a common infrastructure for the carbon market registration and transaction. And so 2 things. My first question is how do you see the role of technology, especially the decentralized technology within this carbon market to address the problem you talked about? And maybe the second is call for action. What do you think about creating a collaborative common framework, technological framework based on public blockchain among the countries in Africa, basically to have a common ledger where everyone can tap on for carbon credit, offshore carbon credit, and inshallah voluntary carbon market as well, qualitative voluntary carbon market, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Who wants to take that question? It's a question of technology and the blockchain. Yes, Mr. Nasri, you want to go?
Sure. Actually, thank you for the question. We're actually experimenting how blockchain can work on our projects in North Africa. One of our project developers has partnered with KliK, which is a rocket startup. And so blockchain for us is not really on the transaction level, because that's done by the government. So your call of action should be addressed to the government, and I would be quite happy to transfer the message. But at our level, at the project level, we're trying to introduce blockchain in order to track the emissions, right? Because sometimes in our activities we go on a programmatic approach, and and that forces us to have many small players, many small stakeholders that benefit from these carbon revenues. And so we need technologies like blockchain to keep track, to guarantee a certain level of transparency. I believe that blockchain can provide us with the highest level.
Thank you for that response, Nasir. We have another question, I think the last, before we share the results of the thoughts we shared. Okay.
Just like
please.
Yeah. Just a couple of information about, first of all, I would say welcome to Casablanca Finance City, because we are trying to build one of the most vibrant ecosystem of capital market players in the continent. So welcome, and we are open to all these technologies and new ways to do things in our continent. It will be, we believe in technology, we believe in blockchain, and we think that because some of the most important impediments to the development of capital markets in Africa is, first of all, infrastructure, second, laws, rules, regulations, and also compliance. So I think that with technology we can solve the problem of infrastructure. We can do it together, and we can solve also the problem of compliance in terms of transparency and integrity. So once again, welcome, and we are open to discuss all that we can do together.
Thank you very much. We take the last question. Please keep sharing your thoughts. We need more people to share their thoughts on the most critical barrier to scaling capital markets in the region. We have a question. Last one.
Thank you. Gabby from Bank of Africa. An open question. Morocco has a rendezvous with two major events, the African Cup of Nations and the World Cup. So my question is, do you see any opportunity or potential business opportunity in developing carbon credits related to these events?
Any opportunities linked to capital markets that would arise from events like the African Nations Cup, for example? I can sense all the welcome. I sense that Gabi is a football fan, so does anybody want to give a try? Yes, Mr. Mohammed Rachid, you can go ahead. Yes. Okay, can you ask your question again, sort of like?
Any opportunity related to the two events Morocco has removed, like the African Cup of Nations and the World Cup? Do you see any potential business opportunity related to carbon markets?
Okay. For myself, I can't answer specifically to that question because I have no idea what to do. I didn't get through it for the moment.
As a football fan, I may have something to say. As a Calgary, I support the man issues. I would think that with such a very big, I would say, UNEP events, if one may describe them, such as the World Cup, Olympics, where we all come into this very beautiful, evangelized competitions are. They create a lot of momentum across different layers and across different stakeholders. It's very difficult to reach out to them. So that momentum can be used, of course, for different purposes. To promote for sustainability in general. One can relate to a very recent example, the very recent World Cups, and they have initiated some sort of good momentum around the workers' human rights. And a lot of development has been changed because of that, because of the momentum around it. Yeah, which was a very big part of the most important part when it comes to speaking about sustainability, about human rights and working rights and so on. And the very recent 3-4 World Cups have helped that all to be improved. Yeah. So one may assume that this using these platforms as a momentum to promote for sustainability in general and potentially indirectly to carbon markets could be the case. That's quite a long way to go. Maybe because I spent a good night of football yesterday with Turkey and Barcelona, the 14th night, but this idea I stepped over to cannot get rid of the mind.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for all of the responses you provided to the questions that have been asked by the audience. And we also thank the audience for responding to the question we asked them. And we can see the results displayed on the screen. I think we can all see the first or the most critical barrier to scaling carbon markets in Africa and the Middle East is limited technical capacity for monitoring, reporting, and verification, closely followed by fragmented policy frameworks and the lack of access to upfront financing. So those are the top three. Last question to each of you, just 30 seconds to answer. What can we do about the capacity to build capacity building in the region to reduce this barrier?
If I may, I think this is a learning curve for all countries worldwide. I would say that there are developed countries that have more capacities in carbon markets, because clearly Ghana is one leading the way today. I think that it's a learning curve for everyone. I mean, even various governments that we deal with are still exploring how they can best benefit from this new momentum on carbon markets. Again, it's a learning curve for everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, as I have mentioned before, in Casablanca Finance City, with the cooperation of the region of Casablanca, we are launching in the next 2 months the African Finance and Sustainability Institute. We'll have testing, training, and certification in sustainable finance with the most known institution in the world. For example, the CFA Institute, the Chartered Financial Institute. So we will have certifications, known certifications recognized worldwide in terms of sustainable finance. And our goal is not from Morocco, but to position Casablanca and Morocco as a hub of excellence that is essential for the community skills of sustainable finance. So I think that this is something very important to form and in this specific.
Thank you very much.
It's difficult to add after those two good statements, but one may add something about the sharing best practices across regional. Like yesterday, I learned from about CCAM, an Egyptian company that was able to create carbon credits from working with 30 or 40,000 of farmers. So that they have been able to work with them, engage with them, and then create some carbon removal and carbon reduction with 30, 40,000, correct? That's the number. Working hand in hand with the Financial Regulatory Authority in Egypt and create a carbon credit out of it. I think it's a fascinating example that, so I would say that sharing such best practices across the region would be of a great help. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this exchange. That's insightful and also very engaging with the audience. We want to thank you all for taking time to share with us, and also you to have taken time to participate in responding to the question we asked you. Here we have it. Ambition, innovation, collaboration, once more, comes out as the keywords to retain from this conversation. Yesterday when asked what was the single thing, one thing that could be done to advance sustainable finance in this region, a participant on one of the panels said, let's keep talking about it. We started the conversation. Let's keep talking. Thank you very much.